Hello, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Nick, and this is part two of getting started in graphic design. In the first video, we talked about certain utensils and like drawing stuff like markers, pencils, papers, things like that you need to get started. Today, we're going to be talking about resources like books and other designers and social media and websites. So, without further ado, let's get started with some books. Number one on our list is probably just a download at this point. I don't think they actually make this anymore, but this is the AIGA Business and Ethics Guidelines book, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. Essentially, what this is a, I don't want to say mandate because like there aren't like, there aren't things that you can do criminally in the same way that you can do like architecture. Like if you're practicing architecture and you're not accredited and vetted and like all that other good stuff, then there could be legal ramifications coming after you. If you design a logo, you might infringe on someone's copyright, but the state isn't necessarily going to come after you. But with the design and business ethics is basically a code that everybody follows so that when a client encounters a graphic designer, they will encounter the same rules with designer A, with designer B, so on and so forth. That way you're not getting into a bunch of conflicting information and practices and things like that. Like everyone in the field should be kind of doing the same thing. Everyone is different, so there's going to be different nuances, but everyone should be generally adhering to this book right here. This is really, really awesome. I got it from when I signed up with AIGA, the American Institute of Graphic Arts. I believe now it's just a download on the website aiga.org, and you'll be able to find it there and download the PDF and save it to your computer. Keep coming back to it. Next, we're going to talk about thinking with type. So, before I kind of touched on laying out text or laying out a design, and in that layout, you're going to be finding what type is going to go where images are going to go, so on and so forth. A book like this will help you with what words and what typefaces to use in those layouts. For example, and how to display them as well, but we'll get to that in a second. If you've never heard of a bold or a serif or a tail or an X height or a cap height, leading, kerning, if these are all foreign terms to you, go get this book. If you're going to be a designer, you're going to need to know what these terms mean and how they will get you a better result or get the result that you're looking for. Because sometimes your result might be you want it to kind of look disheveled. Like that's probably the purpose of your design. But if you want something neat, clean, and adhering to a certain look or feel, a book like this is pretty incredible. For example, there are time eras where fonts and typefaces come from. So if you're doing something for like a museum and they're doing something on like, I don't know, the Renaissance, right? Then you're probably going to want to find a text or a font, typeface, whatever you want to call it, letters, whatever. You probably want to find something that is comparable to that era. So you don't want to come up with like a text or a font like Helvetica to show Baroque architecture, right? Unless that's like part of your design language. But if you're maybe putting together a poster, finding a Baroque era font to go with the Baroque era artifacts that they're displaying at that museum, that makes a lot more sense. So this guy right here, this guy, this guy. Next on our list is Color Harmony. Color Harmony, or a book like this, I mean, these are suggestions, by the way. These aren't necessarily like, if you don't use this book, then you're going to be a loser. I'm not saying that at all. But you want something like these resources to help you on your path. Anyhow, back to Color Harmony. So this book allows you to see how color impacts your design. Back in the previous video, I spoke about how color doesn't really come into play with your logo design. That's true to a point. It's true because if your logo works in one color, then it'll work in many colors. If you lock in your logo so that, say, like it works in like blue and green, and then say maybe that company changes their colors later, or that blue and green doesn't fit well with this particular item, or they're creating a banner and they can't use full color, they can only use one color, then your logo now doesn't work because it's stuck in a color world and there's no color to be had. However, if you're coming up with a visual identity, a book like this is incredibly powerful because in Color Harmony or books in this same family, they explain how color subconsciously or consciously affects the human psyche for their brand. If you're creating something for like a wellness center, right? That would be different than creating something for like a romantic getaway. That's like the obvious link, right? If you're creating something for like maybe a construction company and they want to build on the power of their machinery and that kind of stuff, that's a different thing. If you want to create something for like maybe music and like the tranquility of that, that's another avenue that you want to go for. If you want to create something that's like more graphic and in your face, like a play or something like that, that's a different thing. All of those are kind of illustrated in a book like this, and it kind of helps you think in the right mind space of what you want to create color wise. It's not really any design suggestions in here, but it would get a little cluttered and a little muddy if it did. But resource like this is something that I turn to frequently because I know color, but I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know how color affects the mind and makes people think, ooh, yeah, I really like that. I don't know why I like that, but I like it. Color. Next, got a couple classrooms in the book. So we're going to get into this in the next video when we start talking about technology. These are Adobe Classrooms in a book. This one specifically is for Photoshop and one for Illustrator. Now, these are for CS6. I'm not sure if they published anymore because I haven't really needed anymore because as the updates come out, I find out what the updates are and I just roll with it. So I don't really need to buy the books again because once you go to Creative Cloud, it's basically building off of CS6. And I came from CS6 before I moved to Creative Cloud. So there you go. But in this book, if there's literally anything that you are struggling with or something that you don't understand or know how to use, if you refer back to one of these guys, there's a tool that they explain in detail on how to go through it. And they kind of have project files, which is really helpful because they'll, instead of just saying, click here, click here, click here, it comes up with a design problem that you need to solve, and it shows you how to solve that problem. So these are incredibly helpful in that they walk you through those issues, and I find myself referring back to them quite often. Well, I shouldn't say quite often. I mean, often enough to where it's the digital age, and I'll look online and see if there's something that maybe I missed. But 99% of the time, if I pick up one of these books, it's definitely in there. And if you're starting out, there's no better place than one of these guys because you want to know how to do things the right way the first time. And from a resource like Adobe, who creates the software, what better place to start, right? Next, we're going to talk about some magazines, periodicals, I don't know, stuff that you basically find at the newsstand at Barnes & Noble. That's what we're getting into now. First one is Print Magazine. This is something that you're going to want to pick up. They have various series in Print Magazine. They also focus on areas of design in each issue. So say, this issue, like they'll focus more on like freelance designers. And then the next time they'll talk about in-house designers. And then the next time they'll talk about studio designers. So it gives you a peek on the different avenues of design that are out there and how they may affect your career path and how to be successful at it. It also has things where they have industry experts come in and talk about various techniques, such as like setting up a poster or creating a poster with this specific technique, or setting up a book with these techniques in it, all that kind of good stuff. This is a goodie right here. So next we're going to talk about How Magazine. So How Magazine is related to Print Magazine in that they focus on graphic design and graphic designers. One thing I should also mention is that these two books are based out of the UK. So if you just know that. I mean, the ads are for the UK mostly. There's some, United States based ads. There's also weird spellings of words. Get past that, we're all adults, you're good. The reason why I like How Magazine is that they have multiple issues where they focus on a single topic. So like we spoke about thinking with type, they had a typography module, I don't really know what you want to call it, but they had a typography thing that they did last year where over the course of 6 issues or so, they spoke about the first beginning steps all the way through laying out text for like a magazine article. So it goes into all of those details and steps that you need to follow, and things with like layout, like you don't want to leave like a single word on the end of a line because that's a design no-no. Don't want to do that. Also, like when you type out large like columns of text, sometimes there's called like rivers in there where like all the spaces line up for whatever reason, and then like that's unpleasing isn't a word. That's unpleasing to the eye. So things like that kind of help you out in your process. There's also lots of like little articles in there, such as like how to get started in freelance, all the way to like landing a studio job with expert level portfolio. It tells you all of that good stuff, and they're all found like in these two, Print Magazine and How Magazine. These are like two of my faves whenever I go to my Barnes & Noble and I sit down with my coffee and maybe a scone and maybe a comic book too. So here's our last magazine-y periodical monthly thingy that we're going to talk about, and that is communication arts. Communication arts differs from How and Print in that they have 6 annuals that come out per year where they focus on a single topic. And what's awesome about it is that these things are pulled in from all over the globe. So in each issue, and this boy ain't cheap. I mean, it's about the price of a book. This guy is $24, but you can get a subscription, so it's cheaper, but still whatever. But the reason for that is that they get this stuff, like I said, from all over the world, and they put it all in one place. So say they're focusing on marketing or branding, right? For your money, you have a right now, this minute, what is bleeding edge design in that area, right? That is invaluable to you because when you're going through your research phases of your designs, you can pick up a resource like this and see what's going on. Like there's a logo annual as well. They do like font and type annuals. They do layouts and stuff. And I mean, we're talking about heavy hitter brands too, like Nike, Apple, Microsoft. I mean, we're like huge brands, and how their impact through design touches their clients and their customers around the world. And also, it's interesting to see what functions as elite design in, say, like Argentina versus elite design in Peru or Europe or the United States, things like that. I mean, it's really awesome, and it's a really great resource to have on your bookshelf. Highly recommend this guy too. Next on our list are these guys right here. So this focuses on Illustrator, this focuses on Photoshop, and these are two things that I got when I first started in design. Well, I shouldn't say that, but these are when I started getting serious about freelance design. And I've kept them around ever since because there's valuable techniques in here. We'll get a little more in depth into Illustrator and Photoshop once we get into the technology in the next video, but I'm just, giving you out the resources now. So with a book like the Photoshop techniques, it focuses on Photoshop, right? In the Illustrator, it focuses on Adobe Illustrator. What's helpful about these, a lot of times they come with a disc, which this guy has right here. And on that disc, whatever. And on that disc, there are resource files, because inside the book, they go through stuff, and the disc gives you the files so that you can follow along, because nothing teaches learning better than doing, right? At least in my opinion. I mean, you can tell me something all day long, but until I get my hands on it, I'm not completely convinced that it's going to work, right? So that's another great thing. Also, if you get one of these, they have websites where you can download these source files from as well, so you can follow along that way. So say maybe, some kid came in and just said, I want that disc, so they just take it. I don't know, or it broke or whatever. I mean, it doesn't have to be negative. Whatever. I'm a cynic, but Then you can go onto the website and you can download it, and you can follow along with those techniques inside the book itself, right? Same with the Illustrator. It does things very similarly, where it goes through like steps of stuff and shows you how to go through and do things similar to the Photoshop book, except it's just Illustrator. So, I mean, same thing, except they're very, very different programs for very, very different uses. So, they're two very, very different books. Makes sense, right? Finally, we're going to talk about this guy right here. This is my Saul Bass book, A Life in Film and Design. I never read the subtitle because I just saw Saul Bass and I just got it because whatever. So with this book, it goes into Saul Bass, who, if you've never heard of Saul Bass before, once you're done with this video, Google it. Google him, I should say. He was a graphic designer, lived during his prominent design days came mainly between like the 50s and like the 70s. He did some stuff in the 80s and 90s as well, but like that was like the forming years of what a lot of designers consider as the modern graphic design is during the days of Saul Bass. Much accredited to himself for designers like him, but this guy was pretty prolific himself. This resource is not only more or less a biography that was written about him, but it also has plenty of stuff that he did. Look at that. It turned to like the cover image, like completely, there's no markers. I just did that because I'm awesome, I guess. I don't know. But it shows you the stuff that he's done in beautiful detail here. And pardon me looking down, because I'm like looking down at the page, and like shows you some of the posters that he's done over the years. He's done so many great things. Some of the stuff that comes to mind is he did the poster design for The Shining and for, I forgot what it's called, Vertigo, the movie, Alfred Hitchcock movie, Vertigo. He also did a design for, I believe it was Mobil gas stations, now Exxon Mobil, I believe they're called, where he created the modern concept of gas stations with like the convenience store and how the gas stations are spaced, like where you actually, like the fuel pumps, I should say, not the gas stations, where the fuel pumps are spaced, like not just for Exxon Mobil, but that pattern design has been implemented across gas stations now. I mean, like whenever you pull into a gas station, 99% it's a Saul Bass style gas station. I mean, like that's how prolific and how design can really affect the world. And why I got into design myself is because your ideas can shape the greater world around you through your thoughts, through your hand, and through the expression of those designs into the workplace, and not only the workplace, but into the culture itself, right? So that was one reason why I got into design. This is why I have this resource right here. Why I hope that you pick it up, because I want you to see how much of an impact you can actually make on the world with graphic design by simple things. I mean, for example, a designer. I'm looking into a camera right now. A designer put Canon zoom lens EFS 18-135 They put all that stuff on that lens, and I know when I grab that lens that that's what it is without having to like look at the sides or check the length of it. I know because it says that on there. A designer thought to put that on there, and that's smart, right? A designer laid out the buttons that are on top of that camera. These are all things that impact anyone who ever picks up a camera. Same with someone who picks up a flyer, say for, you know, a retirement home, right? You probably wouldn't see one with like point 0.3 font on it unless there's some kind of like masochist that hates the elderly, right? You want something with like larger text so that the people that are looking at staying there can read this and they don't have to feel ashamed about passing it on to somebody else and having them read it to them because they can't physically read the letters that are on there. These are ways that you can impact other people, and these are resources that can show you how to get to that point to impact those people in that way. So that's all for today. Hope you liked it. Hope you found it entertaining. If you liked it, give me a like down below. If you didn't like it, give me a dislike below. Constructive criticism, I guess. Give me a shout out. I don't know. Whatever. Give me a comment. Tell me how you enjoyed it. Tell me how you think it could be better. Give me an idea on what kind of resources that you've come across that maybe you find helpful, because I'd like to know. I mean, I'm always sponging up info. That said, take care, everybody.